Hi, my name is Josh Agle, probably better known as the artist Shag, and for years and years people have asked me, how do you make your prints? So I'm going to take you on a step-by-step process, beginning with my rough sketches all the way to holding the finished prints in my hand, and you're going to see how an actual Shag print edition is created. Most artists now are doing digital prints. They might call them giclées or pigment prints. But I like to keep it old school. I like the process and the details of doing silkscreen prints. I fell in love with silkscreen printing when I was doing it myself. Initially, I was doing t-shirts and stickers and then moved on to other things, posters, and eventually fine art silkscreens. So that's something that I've stuck with. About 95% of my prints are silkscreens. This print we're going to look at was inspired by a trip I took to the Eames House, which is one of the most famous houses in LA. It was owned by Charles and Ray Eames, who were famous designers, furniture designers, filmmakers. And the special thing about this tour I took was that it was given by Charles Eames's 3 grandchildren, who were grown adults now, but their stories about visiting the house and being there with their grandfather were what inspired this piece of art, and I call it the 3rd generation. Every piece of art I do starts with a rough sketch, and with my sketches the emphasis is on rough. I'm just drawing to flesh out an idea that's already in my mind, trying to make the composition work on the confines of a piece of paper. People often ask if they can buy my sketches, but once you've seen the unfinished quality of my rough drawings, you'll probably rethink that. For each project, I might draw several of these until I'm satisfied with where I want things to be. Then I take a picture of the sketch and send it to my computer. The completed rough sketch will act as a framework for how I'm going to build this print. In this case, I'm using a program called Adobe Illustrator to actually redraw the elements that will make up the composition. I'm starting with the house itself. I often think of my art as similar to a play or movie where the action takes place on a set, and here the set is the Eames house. My first major in college was architecture, and I was required to make perspective and isometric drawings of structures. That's a skill I still use today when I make art. I'm looking at actual photos of the real Eames house as I create the Shag version. In this case, I've simplified the house and deleted one section of windows to make it work better with my idea of how the print should look. Before I even sketched a single thing, I had an idea in mind for a color palette. Because each color has to be printed separately, I'm limited on the number of colors I can use. For this print, I envision greens, browns, and caramels, with a pop of dark indigo. Eventually, I settled on 10 colors for this image. So I've got my movie set, but now I have to populate it with characters. My intention was to depict Charles and Ray Eames and the 3 grandchildren who gave me a tour of the house as adults. I want them engaged in activities, but I try to raise questions and leave things up to the viewer's interpretation when I'm conceiving a print or a painting. In this case, Charles seems to be enjoying a moment with 2 of his grandkids. But both Charles and Ray Eames were incredibly driven and consumed by their careers as designers. Maybe Charles is testing one of his new toys on a focus group of 2. And Ray Eames, who is not the natural grandmother of the children, is directing the youngest child in the raising of plants, which might be a metaphor. Or maybe they're just watering philodendrons. Again, I start with rough sketches, refining them and even tracing them until I'm satisfied with how the figures look. I send this rough sketch to my computer and redraw the entire thing using the Adobe Illustrator pen tool. This is a tricky tool to master, and I'm making it look easy and quick, but in reality, there is a lot of manipulation and correction in the process. It can take 3 or 4 weeks of drawing and manipulation to get the image to the point where it's ready to be printed. Once the drawing is complete, I can assign colors to the shapes from my palette of 10 colors. Then, like a cinematographer placing actors in a scene, I place and size the characters in the environment and tweak the image until I'm happy with the final result. I now have a digital production file that can be used to print the edition. Sometimes, if I have another print that works with the same color palette, I will gang up 2 prints on a single sheet of paper. I found that if I added 2 more colors to the palette, turquoise and violet, I could also print an image called the Insolent Swan at the same time as I was printing the 3rd generation. For this print, I'm using a silkscreen studio called Collector's Editions. I've worked with their master printer for almost 25 years, and I'm confident in his ability to realize what I envisioned for this edition. I give my production file to the printer, along with a printed color proof, which contains blocks of colors that make up the print. This is what the color separator and mixer will use to produce the different screens and to hand mix the inks to match my colors. The file is first handed off to the color separator. They analyze the print, noting color families within it. That will determine the sequence that the colors will be printed. Sometimes they spot little technical mistakes I made in creating the print, and they consult with me about fixing those. Depending on how many colors are in the print, it can take over a week to create the color separations. These will be turned into film and then used to create a screen for every single color in the print. To burn the screens for each color, a light-sensitive liquid emulsion is applied to a silk-like fabric stretched tight across a wooden or metal frame. This is the actual silk screen, for which the printing process is named. The film positive that the color separator created earlier is placed over the emulsion and exposed to a high-intensity light. This hardens the emulsion not blocked by the black parts of the film, creating what is effectively a stencil, with openings through which the colored inks will be applied to the paper. Once the screens are burned, they are taken to the washout basin, where they are sprayed with a powerful hose that washes away the emulsion which was blocked by the black parts of the film. The areas of the screen that were exposed to the light have hardened and remain on screen after it is washed out to create the stencil. The ink for each of the colors in the print is formulated by hand and eye by the skilled color mixer. No machines or digital automation are used to match the printed color to the colors I specified. The mixed ink is put on a paper swatch and viewed next to the color match proof. Then the color mixer fine-tunes the formula, adding different hues as needed until they match as closely as possible to the original image. Silkscreen ink is much thicker than most other printing inks, and it creates a layer of color on the print that can be over 100 times thicker than the ink on a digital print. The thickness of the ink and the color stability of the tints create an archival print that is much more stable and color fast than other printing methods. The print paper has to have registration holes punched in the corners before any silkscreen ink can happen. These holes line up every color pass exactly the same, so the holes need to be absolutely precise for every single sheet in the edition. Any variation in registration can create unwanted color overlaps or gaps in the print. The screen is then put into the printing press, locked into place, and calibrated to line up with the registration holes in the paper. Ink is spread across the actual screen. The paper is hand-loaded onto the press, and its registration holes are lined up with the registration guides on the actual press. A mechanical squeegee applies the ink in 1 or 2 passes, depending on the density needed for each color. After the print has had its color pass, it is inspected and put onto a drying rack. Fans are used to help dry the ink, which can take several hours. This limits the number of colors that can be printed in a day. An efficient silkscreener can print 2 colors in 1 day. After each single color is printed, the screen is taken to the washout basin and the ink and emulsion are removed from the screen so it can be used for another color pass. This effectively destroys the stencil that was used in creating the print, meaning the edition can't be reprinted. Once the sheets are dry, the prints are taken from the racks and the process is repeated for each color in the print. Since the 3rd generation is a 10-color print, the entire process of mixing the colors by hand, burning and washing the screens, printing the color, and drying the ink is repeated 10 separate times. After all the colors have been laid down, a single print is sent to me for approval. After I approve the final stage of the prints, they are sent out to a cutter who trims the edges with a precision guillotine to the exact dimensions I specified. The prints are packaged and sent to me by courier. I'm really satisfied with the print. Now it's time to sign and number the edition. I use pencil to sign the prints because historically, that's how artists have done it. I start from the last number and work toward the first, because as I sign the prints, I stack them from the bottom. This way, the last print I number, 1 of 200, will be on the top. Finally, they're sent to the Shag store in the framer, and I'm already thinking about my next print edition. I hope you guys enjoyed that peek behind the scenes of making a Shag print edition. I'm going to continue making them, and I hope to see you at the Shag store sometime.